steward this at all. Like, and so I don't want all of this to sound like a prosperity gospel where if you steward your work well today, God will give you your dream job tomorrow. It may be that God has you stewarding work you don't enjoy for the rest of your life. But if you steward that well, there is biblical evidence that rest of your life that feels like so long right now will be the blink of an eye compared to all of eternity doing the work God created you to do. And we can believe based on scripture that there will be a reward in eternity for those who steward their work well on earth.
I have the one beautiful and successful Kaleigh Cox here with me today. Who is Kaleigh Cox? She is, well, I'll get into your full bio in a second, but basically you co-authored a book with a very famous faith and work author recently, which is a huge accomplishment. And you beat out hundreds of applicants, from my understanding, to get that very prized, unique opportunity, not having been an author before. So the main premise of this conversation in this episode is, how the heck did you do it, my girl?
The short answer is, by the grace of God.
The Lord. Yes. Well, let's see if you have any tips that can aid also the grace of the Lord in people's lives so they can pull off things like this. Before we get into all my questions, I should give that bio that I promised. So you are the co-author of 5 Mere Christians, a book sharing 5 binge-worthy biographies that show readers how to glorify God in their work. And after that project, Jordan Raynor liked working with you so much that he's like, you can't leave. You got to be my VP of marketing of Jordan Raynor & Co. And so that is another massive accomplishment. And I bet that this is not the end of y'all's writing projects together. I would have to
We
assume.
hope not. Yeah.
We hope not. So obviously this kicked off a really exciting and perhaps unexpected new chapter in your life. Can you please bridge the gap for us on how you went from majoring in sociology with a focus on women and gender studies, which I love including because that is like the butt of so many jokes, like, oh, you're just gonna go be a women and gender studies major or whatever, and then you actually end up being a roaring success. And it's the same with my twin sister. She was a dance major, like a ballet performing arts major. And people are like, you're going to be able to make money doing that? She's like, yeah, actually, I use my major every day and I'm doing just fine. So I love stories like yours. Can you please bridge the gap of how you went from that to all the jobs you held until today? Because I really love the varied past that you've had professionally.
Yeah, it's a winding path. I'm going to do my best to hit the highlights, not get too in the weeds here. But it's really cool that we are having this conversation today because just a couple of hours ago, I felt the Lord, what felt randomly to me, prompting me to go find this email thread with an author I had emailed back in 2011. And I tried finding this email thread. I wasn't even preparing for this interview. This was like a pretty random thought that crossed my mind. I had tried finding this a year ago, spent 15 minutes on it and thought, okay, it must have been my old college email and I don't have access to that anymore. But I just, spur of the moment, felt led to do it again. It popped up immediately as soon as I started typing her name. And I about fell out of my chair as I started reading it. So I'm going to read you just a short clip of something I said to this author, Lee McElroy, back in 2011. I was a junior at Furman. And I think it reflects well what I thought I was going to do as I was majoring in sociology, and obviously you'll see what the Lord had planned instead. But in it, I wrote to her, I've always been terrified God would call me to live in a suburb, maybe work a 9-to-5 job, raise 2 to 5 kids, or 2.5 kids, I said, and walk the dog. I've always been afraid of an ordinary life. I believe that I must do something radical in order to get the most of God in this lifetime. I would love to see how to experience him to the utmost in an ordinary life. So this was something I was wrestling with my whole life, and so as a sociology major, I thought I was going to go into full-time ministry. And that was the mindset I had when I graduated college. I went on the mission field for 8 months, thinking I might become a missionary. And while I was overseas, God put this phrase, this calling in my heart, abundant life on Main Street. And I just had this strong sense as I was in Thailand serving in the red light district that what God was wanting me to do with my life was to show through living it myself that you can have an abundant life on Main Street, USA, in an ordinary life. And so when I got back from that mission trip, it took me a couple years to figure out what I wanted to do. I worked a sales job for a few months. I hated that. I worked at Starbucks for a year. I worked at a bridal salon. And then we were moving for my husband's job. So I had to find something else. And I learned you could get paid to write as a copywriter. Wasn't flashy, wasn't like my blogs I had done as a high schooler, just business copywriting. And so I launched a freelance career. I started as a generalist, then I got into website copy, and then I got into the broadband industry just because I happened to have a couple clients in that space, and it snowballed. And one of those original clients was a startup. And so ultimately I was able to grow with that startup. I started doing less and less freelancing work, ultimately became vice president of business development and content operations for that startup as we grew to a team of about a dozen. And then that is what I was doing when Jordan Raynor, an author I admired but did not know personally, sent out an email that he was looking for help with a project. And it didn't say a whole lot, but I threw my hat in the ring, applied to help. That project was this book, 5 Mere Christians. It came out in May. And when I look back on that email thread just a couple hours ago from 2011, I'm just in awe that ultimately the Lord was leading me to write a book to speak to people who feel exactly like I felt in 2011. Like, this is the book I needed to read back then, because these stories are proof that you can absolutely experience God and glorify him to the fullest in an ordinary American life. Or not even just American. Some of our book, our subjects are not American. But.
Yeah, that's right. There's some unique international stories in there. Where was that fear coming from? Like, what were you afraid of? Really, just that you wouldn't. I know that you said in the email that you wouldn't be able to experience God to the fullest. I maybe in my words, at a similar age, I was 20 in college. I just thought I don't know how to have like a meaningful, how I could feel like my life is truly meaningful in a plain or ordinary job. Was it something along those lines or different for you?
Yeah, no, very similar to that. For me, it stemmed from when I was 5. I was in church. I remember this probably my earliest memory. I was in this small Baptist church, and there was a missionary who was speaking. I don't remember anything else about it except that they said, the harvest is plenty, but the workers are few. If you're willing to go, God will send you. And so it became this just fact in my head from an early age that, like, if you loved the Lord and were willing to serve him wherever, he would lead you overseas. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't this calling. It wasn't like, oh, I feel called. It was just like an equation in my head. Like, if this is true, then that is true. And so I grew up thinking, like, I did love the Lord and I was willing to go wherever he led me. Therefore, he must be going to send me overseas. And I was so scared that if he didn't, that it was like this sign that he didn't love me as much as others, or I wasn't as useful to him as others, that I was like a JV Christian, that I had dropped the ball somewhere. If I thought he sent like his best people to the mission field, therefore, if I didn't go, then like there was something wrong with me. And that changed in my 20s from the mission field to ministry. Like, I kept pursuing in my 20s, even after that mission trip, like ministry roles, church roles. And I really wrestled for about 10 years with this sense of like, I'm willing to be used by God in full-time ministry. He clearly isn't accepting that. Like, he doesn't want me there. And so I really wrestled with that for a long time. And Jordan's books were a lot of what brought me freedom from that, those lies and misconceptions I had. And through reading his books and getting involved with his community and things that he had online, I learned to develop a deep sense of purpose and calling in my ordinary work, working for a marketing startup where, most people weren't believers, and it was a broadband industry. It wasn't ministry in the traditional sense, but I felt a deep calling to it. And a lot of that was because of Jordan's work.
Could you give us a couple bang pow proof points of like, why should somebody feel like their work is meaningful or like God is using them in their work other than, oh, you're around people that you could share the gospel with?
Yeah, yeah, that's a common, yeah, I get it. I can share the gospel with people kind of response. But one of the things that really shifted this for me was Jordan writes about it in The Sacredness of Secular Work.
One of my favorites.
Yeah, it's great. The He talks about how there's this emphasis in the modern church on the Great Commission, go and make disciples, and he draws attention back to the First Commission, where God calls Adam and all of mankind to fill the earth, to create culture, to make the world useful, and he points out this greater story arc, that the gospel is not this 2-act story of we were sinners and now we're saved and get to go to eternity. That's part of a bigger story where God created the earth, created us to work in it with him. Then through sin, we experienced death, and then we have life, but not just in eternity one day. We get to have abundant life now. And a huge part of that is through our work every day. And I don't just mean our jobs. I also mean the work we do at our homes and with our families and with our friends and with our churches and all of it. I mean, work is what you're doing anytime you're not resting. And so that is the canvas on which God invites us to experience his love. And when I started to see that, it became easier to talk about my faith with coworkers, but I also felt purpose on the many, many, many days where I didn't talk about my faith with coworkers. I could see God's purpose in me communicating promptly and clearly with a client, or being there to listen to someone who reported to me who was anxious about something, or just doing my work with excellence so that the people who paid for the product would see fruit from using it. All of that was part of that first commission, to partner with the Lord in filling the earth and making it useful. And I still believe to this day, I'm in my dream job with Jordan now, which we could talk about, but I think I could feel this sense of calling in a lot of different roles. I felt it in that marketing startup for a broadband company. And if the Lord doesn't intend for me to work with Jordan forever, I believe I'll feel this way again wherever he puts me next.
Oh my gosh, that must be so comforting, not only to me, but anyone else who has ears to hear. I am really encouraged. I think all the time how can people really, are they going to say they felt God's grace today when every customer service interaction was absolutely terrible, and like people shorted them and didn't give them good services in exchange for what they paid for, and people weren't even good stewards of like being a good driver? And I have close people in my life that are still having long-term effects from bad drivers and car wrecks and whatever. It's like, if you were just a good and helpful citizen in those ordinary things, you probably have made somebody feel at least a little flash of heaven on earth. And conversely, if you haven't. So that is very, very meaningful to me, what you said. When you were, I guess you came across Jordan's work, so that's why you were on his like email list, and that's how you saw the invitation to apply for a project that you didn't really know what it would become. Why did you apply? Because my understanding from our hangouts in the past is that you were really happy. You might have even called, I don't know if you would call the last job a dream job, but it was like a sweet setup.
Yeah, I probably did call it that. There was much about it that was a dream job. My husband worked with me. I worked from home. I got to do cool travel. My team was awesome. Clients were great. The broadband industry is full of super kind, genuine people. I loved so much about it. But whenever that application came in my inbox, it was not for a full-time job. It was just helping with a project. And I was used to freelance project mindset. And so I never applied for freelance jobs anymore, but that's what it sounded like. And I thought I would happily do this outside of work hours to get to work with one of my favorite authors. That was my thought. I'll happily do this before or after work or on weekends. And I got my husband's input every step of the way. But yeah, when I threw my hat in the ring, it was a vague application. it wasn't until like the third stage, which was the interview, that I learned it was actually to co-author a full book. So I thought I was just applying for like an ebook, like a short little 10 chapter thing. And I'd work on it for a month on Saturdays is what I thought. So it felt very low stakes to me at the time because I wasn't trying to leave my job. I was happy in my job. So I was willing to pursue it. And then as we got farther along and I realized what it was, by that point, I was really feeling called to do it. But I did still do it outside of work hours. So I wrote the book March 23 to March 24, 2023 to 2024. And I didn't start working with Jordan until January 2025. So I wrote this book 5 a.m., 4 days a week, and then like 8 to 11 on Saturdays for a year.
Oh my gosh, not me over here feeling like an absolute blob. You are very diligent.
It was the Lord's grace, Kelsey, because now I don't have to do that. And I'm struggling to get up even later than that. And I'm like,
yeah.
Like now I just have one job again. And I'm like, what? It was just the Lord that got me up for that year.
Lord. Oh, you're reminding me to ask him for some extra juice today. I gotta get some pump up from him. I wonder how you set yourself apart, or if you really thought about that in the application process. I imagine you only found out on the back end how many odds you beat.
Yeah.
By
Thankfully.
Getting this. Yeah, I don't know how helpful that would be to know ahead of time.
Yeah.
But do you think that there's anything that you did that made you the successful candidate?
So I wasn't doing this on purpose, but I have heard Jordan answer a version of this question. And like, what was it that made me stand out to him? And he said it was my humble audacity, which we talk about in our book, that Hannah More, one of our featured people, is an example of how mere Christians can glorify God with humble, holy audacity and being willing to take big swings, knowing that if it's the Lord's will, then it'll happen. And if it's not, it won't. And there's freedom in that. And so what that looked like practically is in the middle of this whole process, there were 2 books God used to like speak to my heart and say, like, this is where we're headed. Like, you're going to co-author this book. I thought, and I was willing to be wrong, that I was like not hearing from the Lord, but this was the nudge I was getting. One was Ashley Gadd's book, Create Anyway, because she's talking all about the beauty of writing in the margins of motherhood. And it just felt like the Holy Spirit was saying, like, you can write in the margins of your job in motherhood. Like, that's what that book was saying to me. Like, you can say yes to this. And then the other one was Andrew Peterson's book, Adorning the Darkness. And there's this little section where he basically says, like, being a published author is not all it's cracked up to be. Like, most people aren't going to care. Like, don't ask your friends if they read your book. They did not read your book, which is advice I have followed. And he said, like, you have to write because you love the writing, not because you're like excited for the affirmation on the other side. Because even when you get affirmation, it's going to fade. And he specifically said, I went back and read it the day our book launched and I got to see it at Books A Million. He specifically said, it's really exciting to see or Barnes & Noble, it's really exciting to see your book on the shelf at Barnes & Noble, but then you leave and you have to get on with your life. Like, it's just a flash, like you can't commit to writing an entire book because you're excited about that 15-second moment. And that was also an encouragement to me. Like, okay, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it because I'm enjoying the work of getting up with the Lord in the unseen hours and writing and putting the stories together. Like, I'm going to enjoy the work for the work. And so those 2 things had really shaped me already by the time I had an interview with Jordan, just out of my quiet times and out of what God had me reading. And so Jordan asked me, to get to the audacious comment I made, Jordan asked me, do you work full time? Like, how do you think this is going to work? Like, you've never written a book. Do you really think you can do this? On the interview where I'm learning it's a book, it was all like a bit of a whirlwind. I was thinking, I didn't even know it was a book until 5 minutes ago. But I said something like, I could be wrong about this, Jordan, and I'm okay if I am, but I believe God is calling me to write this book. I believe he's wired me to be a great number 2. I was in a very much like a number 2 role in the job I had at the time. Co-authoring this felt like kind of a number 2 role to him and his work on it. And I said, I think God's wired me to be a really good number 2. I believe he's calling me to write this book. And if he's calling me to write the book, he'll equip me to write the book. And Jordan has said several times that he was like, oh, okay. Hard to argue with that. But I was clear, like, I wasn't trying to pressure him into it. I wouldn't have been angry with him. I was also convinced if I was wrong about that that God was clearly doing something, that this was going to be part of my story in some way. And so I was at peace with that.
Dang, that's a good swing. You're also, I'm so impressed that you just popped off with that after learning it was a book 5 minutes prior. That's so crazy. So what advice do you have for people who want to? I know that this is a very common question, but it seems like this is something that leads to encouragement we all need all the time. For somebody who would like to start a creative venture, pivot careers, write a book, write a blog, publish on YouTube, be a creator, or even like a marketer, because you didn't start in marketing, you got into marketing.
Yeah.
What encouragement would you have for them to overcome the internal obstacles of getting started? And one, like enjoying the work is one thing that I heard you say instead of just the milestones.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
any tips?
Yeah. So I have a few. My first would be walk with the Lord and surrender to Him. Like, let Him write your story, because no two stories have ever been exactly the same. So yours won't be exactly like mine. And so don't try to turn my story into a roadmap, but surrender to Him, walk with Him daily. And if you see a door of opportunity with a crack in it, poke your head in and look around and start taking steps and ask the Lord, either bless it or shut the door. Like, don't get hung up on praying for a sign that you just never move. Like, take the step and surrender it. Like, Lord, you can shut the door if you want to shut the door. And unless you give me a clear no, I'm moving forward because this seems like it's from you. And then just take that one day at a time, just like God was using books that I was reading just because to start speaking to my heart that that's what was next and He was going to carry me through it. Like, if you're in relationship with the Lord, He's going to do that for you. So that's my first caveat, foundational point. But in terms of getting into something creative, I would say focus on getting really good at your craft. So whenever I started freelancing as a copywriter, I had been blogging. I joked about that, but I had been blogging throughout high school and college and when I was on the mission field, and I really enjoyed it. And so I wrote a little like digital sticky note on my computer back then where I could see it every day on like reasons I was going to try freelancing. And the only one I remember clearly was I said I wanted to get good at writing. And so, I wasn't writing about the Lord, but I was learning how to be a wordsmith. I was learning how to make words sound good. Jordan kept commenting on that when he would read my draft. Like, your background in marketing has made you really good at thinking about how words will sound, using alliteration and things like that, or being a storyteller, being a strategist. I was doing it with freelance clients, a couple hundred of them over several years, in all these different industries. And so hone your craft, get good at your craft. And then finally, I would say respect your clients or employers you have today, because they are not stepping stones to your next work.
Oh,
they are
my
the
goodness.
work God has given you to do today. And if you do excellent work that loves them well, then you are going to get better at your craft. And when we are faithful with little, the Lord will entrust us with much. It may not be the much we thought, it may not be the much we asked for, but if you're not respecting the work God's given you to do today, why on earth do you think He's going to give you the role you want tomorrow?
Oh my gosh, put this on a pillow, put it on the Hallmark's next little gift card. This is so good. Wow. That I'm sure just pierced the heart of a few people listening. And I think that's so impactful. I see so many people crapping on the work they have today just because they don't like it, or they don't feel like their company is worth a hill of beans, or their boss is a good person. But dang, can you say that again? Like, if you can't steward what you have today, why would you
Yeah, I
get to
think
move on
I
to
didn't write this down, but it was. I think I said, if you aren't stewarding well the work God's given you to do today, why do you think He's going to give you the work you want to do tomorrow?
Dang.
Yeah,
Sometimes that's hard for me because I don't want to get into like a earning or bartering with God, but at the same time, don't overcomplicate it. Do always make sure that you are a steward. It's not about
yeah.
deservingness, it's just about doing what's right.
I think what's helped me with that is reminding myself that I have to be okay with it if the reward doesn't come until eternity. Because there is evidence in scripture that at the end, when Jesus comes and renews all things, that he will judge the work we've done at the bema seat, I think is the language to use. Even as believers, he will judge the work we've done, and that we will then work with him in a fulfilling, sin-free way in eternity. And there are the parable of the man with the talents, where the, I guess, multiple men with talents, where God is giving different people a different amount of talents, and then when he returns, or I guess when the master returns, representing Jesus returning, he says, like, oh, you stewarded this well, come in and I'm going to give you more to steward. You didn't steward this at all. Like, and so I don't want all this to sound like a prosperity gospel where if you steward your work well today, God will give you your dream job tomorrow. It may be that God has you stewarding work you don't enjoy for the rest of your life. But if you steward that well, there is biblical evidence that rest of your life that feels like so long right now will be the blink of an eye compared to all of eternity doing the work God created you to do. And we can believe based on scripture that there will be a reward in eternity for those who steward their work well on earth. So I would just encourage people to have a much longer timeline in mind. He may bless you with your dream job now, but if he doesn't, like, we have all of eternity for God to give us work we love.
Dang, dog. You're a wise one. That was so good. I especially your comment about don't treat your current clients as a stepping stone. They are your current work to steward. I think about this phrase that really did not sit well with me at all. I a long time ago had an intern that was like drafting some social media posts and some tips and whatever. And one of the things that she had drafted for us to post that I vetoed so hard was don't learn on somebody else's dime. Learn on somebody else's dime. Go get a job and like, oh, no. Sorry, it was worse than that. Fail on someone else's dime. And that, I thought, oh my gosh, please never do that. You're literally hurting people. Do you think that the boss man or the boss lady is just this faceless org that has endless money and no impact whatsoever will reach them if you are just treating their job as a playground to fart around, find out, and like eventually get a better job? That is so, so hurtful. And I feel that so personally, I mean, this girl is like an absolute star. I don't think that she meant that. And she certainly never, I never felt like she was in a job with me to like fail on my dime at all. So it might have been just like a funny TikTok thing that she wanted to repost. But I just think it gets so personal once you're an employer, realizing how much you need everyone to give their best, and failure or down days like aren't free.
Yeah.
So especially to realize that as a freelance contractor who might very well be using this in some way to get a stepping stone to a better or a full-time gig or something like that. It's so honoring to be present and fully give yourself to the work. A professor I really enjoyed learning from said this, and I never forgot it: treat every relationship as if it's forever. And that's another thing that goes along with what you said. Anyway, I could keep digesting that statement for quite some time. Thank you so much for that advice. To close, would you please pray for the listener that's inspired by your story and wanting God to use them fully wherever that is?
Oh, it'd be my honor. Yeah. Lord, you are the author of our faith and the author of our story. I pray for the person listening or watching who has felt the way I used to feel, like maybe you don't see them and maybe you don't care about them, or maybe you don't have a purpose for them because of the type of work they do every day, because it doesn't feel important. It doesn't feel valuable to your kingdom. Thank you for bringing me freedom from those lies. And I pray that you would do the same thing for the person listening, that you would show them that you love them and that the work they have today is an opportunity for them to do it with you, to deepen their walk with you, to deepen their trust in you, to discover new things about you, new things about how you made them. Um, I just pray that even if it's a difficult environment, God, that you would be with that listener, be with that viewer, and that you would guide them to either stand firm through that trial or guide them out of the trial. But I just pray that you would be the author, that you would be the leader, that you would do what none of us can do on our own, which is to write our story and to direct our steps. I'm thinking of that verse, you will hear a voice in your ear telling you, this is the way, walk in it. And I just pray that over the person listening who feels trapped. I pray that you would establish the work of their hands. I pray that you would bring fruitfulness out of their faithfulness, that you would equip them to do the work you've given them to do, that you would equip them to will and to work for your good pleasure and for your kingdom. It's all you, Father, and I just pray that you would be felt, and that the people who are listening who feel unsure of what's next, they would just feel a peace and a trust in you. And I pray that you would write a beautiful story in their lives and in their work that lets them know that you love them, and right where they are, they are called to where they are today, to where their feet are today. And I pray that they would steward that responsibility well, and that you'd be glorified in Jesus' name.
Amen. Oh my gosh. The verse from Isaiah 30 that you quoted about this is, you'll hear a voice behind you
Mhm.
saying, this is the way, walk in it. Every time I hear that, I'm like, Lord, for real, snap that into action right now. I want to hear your voice. I have personally been so encouraged by our conversation. I was a little tempted actually to turn it into a live coaching session, with me being the recipient, because I find myself at a little bit of a crossroads, like overwhelmed and saddened by a lot of ideas that I have tried that have not
Mhm.
panned out. And my natural inclination of how God made me is I'm just a creator. I love starting things and creating things. And I have felt like I can't do that anymore because it's not going to work and I'm
Mm.
just a silly little girl, you know?
Mm.
And so I have taken to heart so many of the things that you've said about trusting that as I seek the Lord, he will either speak or in his silence is giving me permission to try something again with my free will. And whatever it is, not just doing it for the end results, the milestones, affirmations, or earnings, but rather the work itself, and hopefully have it be something that is as helpful to others as possible. And so I wanted to say that to thank you personally for the wisdom that you shared today and to say it matters. So thanks.
And as you were saying that, I was remembering a quote. I can't believe I didn't share this yet because I share it all the time. But Jill Briscoe, I heard her say this at If Gathering Conference back in 2017. She said, "Go where you're sent, stay where you're put, give what you've got until you're done." And so, where you are currently sent and put, Kelsey, requires creativity and trying new things. So if God does not want you to test and try new things, he will move you to a role where you do not need to test and try new things. But right now, where you have been sent and where you've been put is a role where a leader needs to be willing to try and test things and let them fail and learn from them and tweak them and try something else. So until God moves you somewhere else, until you're done, keep doing that.
Thank you. I Amen. Salute. Yes.
Thank you so much for having me, Kelsey. I have been so excited to get on here and talk with you and to share this story. And I hope it will encourage someone who's listening. And I'm just honored to be here.
Oh man. Well, I'm honored to have you. I command listeners to go out and buy Five Mere Christians, the five, remind me of the tagline.
Binge-worthy biographies that show you how to glorify God at work.
So encouraging. And if you need a little extra something, you could dip back into the other catalog of books that Jordan has authored around the sacredness of secular work, redeeming your time, fa la la, there's lots. And where else can people keep up with you or support your work?
Yeah, they can find me on LinkedIn, Kaleigh Cox. That's pretty much the only place I'm like publicly available, but I am active there. And I would also say if you want to try out the first of the 5 biographies, so these are short, binge-worthy biographies about men and women who glorified God without becoming pastors or religious professionals. The first one in the book is Fred Rogers. And if you want to read that one for free to try it out, you can go to jordanraynor.com/Fred, F-R-E-D, and we'll email it to you where you can grab it in whatever format you prefer. So if you want to test it out, you can do it for free.
Oh, we're slamming that in the description right at the top. I hope that people will go take advantage of that because Fred is basically like the second Jesus Christ. So it'll be really nice.
One biographer called him Mother Teresa in a cardigan.
For real though. Oh my goodness. Well, go take advantage of that. And thank you, Kaleigh, for being here.
Thank you, Kelsey.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. To get an even more meaningful head start into your calling, head to thecalledcareer.com, where my fellow career coach Audrey and I have created a whole suite of free resources and tools to help you get clear and get a job today. For those who are definitely ready to land a job or start a business in the next 6 to 12 months, we're here to help you biblically and practically discern your calling through coaching, reflection, and deep market research. Identify the job that's aligned with it, even if you currently have no idea what you want. Rebrand your resume and LinkedIn to translate your background to appeal to your future boss. P.S. We take this off your plate and do this for you. Also, we'll teach you how to land referrals and get attention from leadership through networking. Again, if that makes you nervous, we have these emails and LinkedIn messages literally written for you so you don't have to sweat. We're also here to give you unlimited interview practice so you're prepared to address every elephant in the room and knock selling yourself out of the park. Then we'll round out with helping you negotiate your salary so you land thousands more. Just so you know, recent clients have gotten $8,000 to $50,000 salary increases, even though they were totally non-traditional candidates. That's because we specialize in helping non-traditional career pivoters land jobs they're ecstatic to serve in. It takes work, but we're here to see you through until the end, when we're celebrating that day that you send me an email in all caps and you say, Kelsey, I got the job. Then you could be on the podcast. But I'll be here until then, keeping you accountable and encouraged by meeting with you literally until you land the job you want, even if that's up to 6 months from now within our program. Apply to join at thecalledcareer.com, and I'll see you next week here at Answer the Call. Bye for now.